Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Shugborough Inscription, an 18th century monument code that has resisted every codebreaker. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On the grounds of Shugborough Hall in Staffordshire, England, there is a marble relief sculpture based on a painting by Nicolas Poussin. Relief depicts three shepherds and a shepherdess examining a stone tomb inscribed with the words "et" in Arcadia Ego, a phrase famously associated with mysteries surrounding the Holy Grail and the Priory of Sion. But what makes the Shugborough monument unique, and what has driven cryptographers, historians, and conspiracy theorists to obsession for 2.5 centuries, is not the relief itself. It is the 10 letters carved beneath it: D.O.U.O.S.V.A.V.V.M. These 10 letters appear in no known cipher system, match no known abbreviation, and have been examined by some of the greatest cryptanalytic minds of the last century, including Bletchley Park codebreakers, GCHQ analysts, and academic linguists, without being definitively solved. The monument was commissioned by Thomas Anson around 1748 and completed during the tenure of his brother George Anson, one of the most celebrated British admirals of the 18th century, who circumnavigated the globe between 1740 and 1744 and captured a Spanish treasure galleon worth the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars. The Anson family was connected to Freemasonry, to the intellectuals of the Enlightenment, and according to some researchers, to a secret society called the Priory of Sion. Whether the inscription is a Masonic cipher, a family memorial, a coded reference to a hidden treasure, or simply an exercise in mystification by educated gentlemen who liked puzzles, no one has been able to establish. The stone has been staring at its visitors for 275 years, with 10 letters that mean everything and nothing. Among those who have attempted to crack the Shugborough Code, Charles Dickens, who reportedly attempted it and gave up; Josiah Wedgwood, the industrialist; modern Bletchley Park veterans working on behalf of the BBC; Oliver and Sheila Lorne, Bletchley veterans who proposed an interpretation but acknowledged it was unverifiable; and teams from GCHQ and the Cipher Challenge community. One interpretation links the letters to a Knights Templar treasure. Another links them to a Latin phrase encoding the location of the Holy Grail. A third claims they are the initials of a Masonic phrase. What makes the Shugborough inscription uniquely frustrating is that without knowing the encoding system, even a correct solution cannot be verified. It may be the only code in history that would remain unsolved, even if you somehow guessed the answer. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The 20th and 21st centuries were supposed to be the age of answers. Science had decoded DNA, split the atom, put humans on the moon, and mapped the genome. By the logic of accelerating discovery, every mystery should be converging toward explanation. And yet the ledger of genuinely unexplained phenomena, events witnessed by credible observers, investigated by serious researchers, and still lacking a satisfying account, has not shrunk. If anything, it has grown. Part of this is a failure of classification. Phenomena that do not fit established categories tend to be dismissed rather than investigated, filed under anecdotal or mass hysteria, and removed from serious consideration. This is not always wrong. Genuine hoaxes and misperceptions account for a large portion of anomalous reports, but the dismissal is sometimes premature and the cost is real. Cases that might have yielded genuine insight are closed before they are fully examined. Witnesses are discredited. Evidence is lost. The question is never properly asked. The cases that endure, that survive rigorous scrutiny and still refuse to yield to conventional explanation, are a small but significant set. They share certain characteristics: multiple independent witnesses, physical evidence consistent with witness testimony, and a complete absence of any plausible prosaic explanation that accounts for all the data. These are not ghost stories. They are open problems in empirical science, waiting for someone with the right tools and the intellectual courage to take them seriously. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Shugborough Inscription, an 18th century monument code that has resisted every codebreaker, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Shepherd's Monument at Shugborough Hall is a marble relief sculpture measuring approximately 2 meters wide and 1.5 meters tall, set into a stone frame decorated with classical architectural ornaments. The relief is based on a 1637 painting by Nicolas Poussin titled Et in Arcadia Ego, or Les Bergers d'Arcadie, which depicts 3 male shepherds and 1 female figure examining a rectangular tomb bearing the Latin inscription Et in Arcadia Ego, conventionally translated as even in Arcadia, there am I, meaning that death is present even in paradise. Crucially, the Shugborough relief is a mirror image of the Poussin painting and includes an additional female figure absent from the painting, suggesting the sculptor deliberately modified the source. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the inscription D.O.U.O.S.V.A.V.M is carved beneath the relief on a lower stone panel. The letters are clear and unambiguous. There is no dispute about what they say. What is disputed is everything else. Who placed them there, when, for what purpose, and what they mean. The inscription is first documented in an 18th century manuscript and was publicly noted in the 19th century. The monument was commissioned by Thomas Anson, 1695–1773, an MP and founding member of the Dilettanti Society, and the monument was built on the grounds of the Anson family estate Shugborough, now managed by the National Trust. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine, George Anson, 1st Baron Anson, 1697-1762, was Thomas's younger brother and one of the most successful British naval commanders of the 18th century. His 1740-1744 circumnavigation, during which he captured the Spanish Manila galleon Nuestra Señora de Covadonga with its cargo of silver worth approximately pound 500,000, tens of millions in modern terms, made him extraordinarily wealthy. Anson later served as First Lord of the Admiralty and effectively created the professional Royal Navy. His connection to the Shugborough Inscription has led to theories that the letters encode the location of treasure he hid, or encode Masonic knowledge he acquired through his maritime connections. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, in 2004, the National Code-Breaking Challenge, organized by Bletchley Park, attracted teams of professional and amateur cryptanalysts who proposed dozens of interpretations for the inscription. Oliver Lorne, a Bletchley Park veteran who worked on deciphering German Enigma traffic during World War II, and his wife Sheila proposed the interpretation Optimi Uxoris Optimi Sororis Vidus Amantissimus Vavit Virtutibus, dedicated to the best wife and best sister. Most devoted widower dedicates this to their virtues. However, even Lorne acknowledged that this interpretation was one of many possible solutions, and that without additional evidence, a key or a confirming document, it could not be verified. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Poussin painting Et in Arcadia Ego has its own long history of mystery associations. It was purchased by Louis Roman XIV and kept in Versailles, and the phrase Et in Arcadia Ego became associated in the 20th century with theories about a secret knowledge tradition linked to the Priory of Sion, a fictional medieval organization invented by forger Pierre Plantard in the 1950 that became the basis for the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail 1982, and Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. Poussin's connection to the Shugborough Monument, a monument built by an English family who selected his painting as their model, has made the Shugborough Inscription a frequent reference point in Grail mythology, regardless of whether this connection is meaningful. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the National Trust, which manages Shugborough Hall, has never removed or altered the inscription and has largely encouraged the mystery surrounding it as a visitor attraction while maintaining scholarly neutrality about its meaning. In 2004, the Bletchley Park Trust offered a prize for the correct solution. No solution has been officially verified. The inscription has been photographed, three-dimensionally scanned, and analyzed by epigraphers and historians without yielding any new physical information. The letter spacing, carving depth, and weathering pattern are consistent with the 18th century date of the monument. No additional inscription, hidden feature, or associated document has been found at Shugborough that provides a key to the cipher. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Shugborough Inscription, an 18th century monument code that has resisted every codebreaker. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the Masonic acrostic theory proposes that the 10 letters are initials for a Masonic phrase or degree motto, possibly in Latin. Freemasonry was extremely fashionable among English gentlemen of the mid-18th century, and both Thomas and George Anson are suspected of Masonic connections, though documentary proof is sparse. Several Masonic phrases have been proposed whose initials match D.O.U.O.S.V.A.V.V.M, but no single candidate has won consensus because multiple phrases can be constructed to fit 10 letters without independent verification. If this interpretation is correct, the inscription was intended only for fellow Masons to recognize and was never designed to be publicly deciphered. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the memorial inscription theory, represented by Oliver Lorne's proposed solution, holds that the letters are initials of a Latin memorial phrase dedicated to a deceased woman, possibly a wife or sister of the commission. This interpretation has the advantage of being emotionally and contextually appropriate for a pastoral memorial sculpture, and Latin memorial inscriptions using only initials were a genuine 18th century practice. However, multiple different Latin memorial phrases can be constructed to fit the letters, and without a confirming document from the Anson family archive, no single candidate can be confirmed over others. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the hidden treasure theory, popular in conspiracy literature, proposes that the Shugborough inscription encodes the location of a concealed treasure, either the physical fortune George Anson accumulated from the Manila galleon capture, a symbolic treasure of secret knowledge, or the Holy Grail itself, linking the inscription to the Poussin mystery and the Priory of Sion. This theory has obvious popular appeal, but almost no evidential support. No treasure has been found at Shugborough or any location proposed by solvers using this framework, and the archival evidence of the Anson family wealth does not suggest any unusual disposition of assets consistent with concealment. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Shugborough inscription, an 18th century monument code that has resisted every codebreaker, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion, we are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the physical inscription itself is the primary evidence. The letter sequence D.O.U.O.S.V.A.V.M is carved in clear, regular Roman capitals on a limestone panel beneath the Poussin-derived relief. The carving shows the same degree of weathering as the surrounding stone and monument frame, consistent with an 18th century date. No secondary marks, darts, or guidelines are visible on or around the letters that might indicate a cipher structure. The spacing between letters is approximately equal, arguing against the letters being grouped into words, which would normally show wider gaps between groups, and suggesting they were intended to be read as a continuous, undivided sequence. This evide NCE has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the Poussin modification, the addition of an extra figure to the relief, and the mirror reversal of the painting is a significant evidential datum. The reversal of the painting means that the pointing gesture of the central shepherd now directs the eye to a different element of the composition than it does in the original, and the added female figure changes the numerical and gender composition of the scene. These deliberate modifications suggest that the artist, or patron, was encoding specific information in the composition, but what information remains undetermined. If the visual changes and the letter inscription are both encoding elements of the same message, a solution to one might illuminate the other. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the 18th century Dilettante Society context of the monument's commissioner, Thomas Anson, is circumstantially significant. The Society of Dilettante was an exclusive gentlemen's club founded in 1734, officially dedicated to promoting classical art, but with a documented tradition of elaborate private jokes, obscure references, and deliberate mystification. Members included some of the most educated and sophisticated men in England, many of whom shared a playful attitude towards secret societies, classical learning, and coded communication. If the Shugborough Inscription is a Dilettantean joke, an elaborate puzzle set for fellow members' amusement with no deeper meaning, it would be consistent with the society's documented character and would explain why it has resisted solution. The key may have died with the men who made it. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Shugborough Inscription, an 18th century monument code that has resisted every codebreaker. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Shugborough Inscription remains officially unsolved. The National Trust manages the monument as part of Shugborough Estate and acknowledges the inscription's status as one of Britain's most enduring unsolved puzzles. The 2004 Bletchley Park challenge generated significant public interest and a large number of proposed solutions, none of which was verified. Subsequent attempts by academic cryptographers, including computational analyzers looking for statistical patterns in the letter sequence, have not produced a consensus solution. The challenge of the Shugborough inscription is that without knowing the encoding system, whether it is a simple substitution cipher, an acrostic, a series of initials, or something else entirely, even a correct solution is unverifiable. Recent interest in the inscription has been renewed by the broader culture of puzzle-solving communities online, including cryptography forums, ARG, alternate reality game, communities, and the overlap with renewed interest in the Holy Grail mythology followed. Wing the success of the Da Vinci Code. Several new proposed solutions have been posted on academic and enthusiast forums in the 2010 and 2020s, using computational tools unavailable to earlier solvers. None has achieved consensus. The Shugborough inscription may ultimately be a monument to the 18th century English gentleman's love of learned obfuscation, but the possibility that it encodes something genuinely important, hidden in plain sight for 275 years, refuses to be entirely dismissed. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Shugborough inscription, an 18th century monument code that has resisted every codebreaker from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Shugborough ultimately reveals is not just a history. Cal puzzle, it is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.